As you're likely already aware, NVIDIA has been taking both the hearts and wallets of investors these days. News this morning shows that NVIDIA has pulled ahead of Tesla as Wall Street's most heavily traded stock. Where does this leave Tesla? Well, while the focus is heavily on NVIDIA, and no doubt they're making major moves, Tesla's own ChatGPT moment might be coming sooner than you think. NVIDIA also just announced their upcoming conference later this month, and they'll be talking beyond LLMs and into robotics and computing. We've got Hans Nelson joining us. Hans has his own YouTube channel called Hans C. Nelson. Welcome, Hans.
Thanks for having me, Herbert.
So you and I want to, many Tesla investors were saying there's a flow of money away from Tesla. It's kind of going into its doldrum period. People are not sure what's going to happen this year. Although we'll bring up the fact that FSD's coming out and bots coming out. And so people are starting to possibly start getting excited about it. But right now, all the attention is in NVIDIA. And this is just another sign. So this morning, NVIDIA is now the most traded stock on Wall Street, overtaking Tesla. Here's a chart showing Tesla, Apple, and NVIDIA. Tesla is the orange-red. NVIDIA is the green. Apple's the blue. So for this kind of like Tesla and Apple were trading places as who's the most traded stock. And then since 2020, basically NVIDIA wasn't really much there. And then all of a sudden, boom, it pops up in 2023. Now it surpasses. So obviously this is very volatile. You can see even Tesla's high down, but Tesla's been the most traded stock forever. And so do you think this is a sign, or is this just a blip for now? What's your interpretation?
Yeah, I mean, NVIDIA, you just have to give it to Jensen. Their execution has been phenomenal over the past number of years. And so I think that really, as we move more and more into the narrative that artificial intelligence is going to be the defining technology of the next decade, so far, I haven't seen any missteps on NVIDIA's part, that they are going to be the focal point for that development over the next number of years. And so I honestly would be surprised if we see this reversing back to Tesla anytime in the near term. Like, Tesla really has to solve some major hurdles and make tangible real world progress that turns into monetization before they can really be considered back in the conversation for who is the most beneficial artificial intelligence company. And part of all of this is we just see investor sentiment that NVIDIA has a much larger market cap right now than Tesla. Investors feel like NVIDIA has a better chance to monetize artificial intelligence moving forward. And for the near term, it looks like that's probably correct. Now, if you look at 10 years out, it really depends on, what's the time horizon that someone as an investor is really looking at. So over the next 6 months to a year, it seems to be the case, all indications show that probably NVIDIA is a better way to profit today from artificial intelligence technology than Tesla is. If you have a longer time horizon, whether that's 5 years or 10 years, potentially even beyond those time horizons, then the question becomes a little bit harder to answer. Is Tesla going to have a larger impact and a larger ability to monetize over those types of timescales, or is NVIDIA? And I think there are really reasonable cases that can be made in either direction. And we just have to give it to Jensen once again in their ability to really be at the forefront of that conversation. Like, it's their race to lose at this point in time, and they're making a lot of moves that show that they really should be a contender, even at longer time scales, to be really at the center of that conversation still.
Yeah, the question I wanted to ask you was like, there's going to be lots of winners, lots of losers in this AI boom,
Yep.
and this massive boom. This is massive. There's going to be a lot of big winners, no matter who you are. But would you bet on, if you have limited dollars, which one would you bet? Like you just said, right? Some is like immediately now versus some later, like Tesla. But which is going to be even bigger, right? Is it the AI tools like chips, or is it the actual AI useful work that's solved, right? Whether it's LLM whether it's a generative AI, whether it's autonomous driving, whether it's the bot or something else we haven't
Hmm.
even figured out, that you can actually really make money on the actual AI itself, not just the tools for it, right? And
Yep.
and we know that NVIDIA is trying to become Tesla, and Tesla's trying to become NVIDIA. So NVIDIA's chips, primarily right now, they've got a platform, coding software. But we'll be showing here shortly that they have this big conference coming up next month, and they are getting into genomics and biology. They're already powering 12 robots companies that have partnership with them, and they're partnering with auto companies to be able to do the autonomous driving. So while they're trying to switch from chips to actual useful AI, Tesla, as you know, and it's not only going robotics and autonomous driving, but they're also are now got their Dojo chips and they're building that up. And when that comes out, they're not going to be a competitor to NVIDIA, but they will have their own powered, maybe do Dojo as a service. What's your thoughts on that comment there?
Yeah, I think that the real question is where's the most competition in the overall stack going to exist, and the places where there's the least amount of effective competition is going to be the place where value is really able to be captured. And so data is going to be a huge area. The ability to collect proprietary data that's not available generally. So that's one of the things that we have seen recently, is that all of these systems that are trying to create an LLM, if their data source is the open internet, then there's like an upper bound on how good can ChatGPT be versus Claude versus Bard, that they kind of all converge to the same end performance because they are all being trained off of the same corpus of data. And so then if you want to differentiate the performance of your system, you actually need special data that other systems don't have access to. This is an area where Tesla definitely has a major advantage because they're kind of at the forefront of data collection of real world data. And if they're able to execute with the Optimus robot, they have a real opportunity to stay kind of at the forefront of having a large fleet of robots that can interact with the real world, collect real world data. So that's kind of on one end of the distribution. The other is that if no one is really able to build these general purpose chips, then if that continues to be the case and NVIDIA is really, uh, you know, pretty much all the major players are trying to compete with NVIDIA, and none of them, including Google, Google has the TPU. The TPU is a great asset for Google itself, but it is in no way a player on the global stage. As new companies are trying to say, "Hey, I want to create an artificial intelligence based service or system." Um, at the end of the day, pretty much almost all of that collapses back to NVIDIA. As long as that is the case, then it will leave NVIDIA in a good position to be able to, continue to build things on top of that stack where they capture a lot of value. So that's really the thing that we have to watch for. Jim Keller has said recently that he thinks that the CUDA, the software that actually NVIDIA has that sits on top of their chips, is not necessarily an asset. A lot of people have felt like it is an asset. Um, it is generally supported, which is a very positive thing for NVIDIA. It's pretty much what everything runs on today. Um, but if there is a new chip architecture with a new software layer on top of that architecture that can be built and is superior to NVIDIA, that's the risk that they face moving forward. And because they are kind of the de facto market leader and are at this point in time able to capture outsized profits, there's a lot of capital and entrepreneurship that is aimed at competing away those massive profits. And so I would say that they're under a lot of competitive pressure. So far, while we see a lot of people starting efforts in robotics to compete more with what Tesla's planning to do with FSD and with Optimus, it none of the seeds are there for anyone to be meaningful competition to Tesla in that arena, as far as I can tell today. Now that can definitely change over the next few years, um, but I would say just competitively, it seems like there are more credible threats to NVIDIA
Mhm.
than there are, and just more motivation overall, especially when you throw national security concerns kind of into the mix. That there's more reasons for people to compete away NVIDIA's advantage over the next 5 years than there are people that are really convinced about the opportunity that artificial intelligence powered robots have over the next 5 to 10 years. There are definitely people that recognize that and are pursuing it, but we don't see the type of coordinated efforts that are funded to the level that
Mhm.
humanoid robots right now are just kind of in their infancy of being an investable opportunity. This has been a very unpopular field here recently, and so it's kind of coming out of that unpopular phase. And so there's a lot more people who are willing to just throw tons of money. I mean, we've heard Sam Altman trying to raise $7 trillion. Like, while that is a crazy number, it's also not a number that people are just like, oh, it's impossible to ever try and dedicate that amount of resources to that project. If someone said we're going to dedicate $1 trillion to humanoid robotics over the next 10 years, that's just not even in the wheelhouse of reasonable expectations for the vast majority of people. So it does leave Tesla in a little bit of an open field with fewer competitors moving forward.
Mhm. So yeah, let's take a look at this new news. Also, that Jensen announced that they're going to have the NVIDIA conference next month, and they're going to reveal their latest breakthroughs in accelerated computing, generative AI, and robotics. So this is going to happen in San Jose Convention Center, March 18th to 21. More than 300,000 people are expected to attend in person or virtually. It's called GTC 2024. And then his key in 2020 in 2014, his keynote. Ever since then, he kind of NVIDIA has been in the forefront of the AI revolution. And then it's not just large language models. They're going to show their efforts in genomics and biology, cybersecurity, data center, cloud computing, conversational AI, networking, physics, robotics, and quantum, and scientific and edge computing. They really is AI applies to everything, including all sorts of industries. So they're going to show 900 sessions, 300 exhibitors, how they're deploying the NVIDIA platforms, breakthroughs across all these industries: aerospace, agriculture, automotive, transportation, everything, healthcare, life sciences, everything. Um, and as we know already, generative AI has moved to center stage, but it's beyond that. Like I was saying earlier, it's going to go into robots and so forth. And so here's the speakers. You got OpenAI, of course, Brad Lightcap. You got Microsoft, AI representative, Google, DeepMind, Meta. So all the big players. You got Stanford. You got Meta, wife of Zuckerberg. You've got SAP, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase. And then you got Johnson and Johnson, you got Medtronic and Boston Dynamics. Yeah, what's your thoughts on the attendees and the topics?
Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting on the one hand. I would say the consensus and the excitement level leads me to feel like this is probably more of a bubble. Like, just, my completely not objective take on it is that NVIDIA feels like today it's in the place that Tesla was about 2021, kind of peak bubble. Because one of the things that we know is that, yes, artificial intelligence is going to transform pretty much all of these areas. The other thing that we learned from the Gartner hype cycle is it's going to be longer and it's going to be harder. It's going to take more time, more effort. It's going to be more of an engineering slog than people are expecting today for it to have that type of impact, um, which is, somewhat of a good factor for NVIDIA if they can remain the premier provider of chips to do that. And it ends up taking longer, more investment, more time. That has a potential to keep them, in a position to make positive revenue throughout the course of that time. But I think that just the overall AI hype right now is probably a little bit exuberant for what's possible in the super near term. Um, And so we could see, a significant pullback in just that level of excitement in, I don't know, the next year, the next 2 years. It's just really hard to say. And one thing that I would say that investors should really take into consideration as they're trying to make decisions about, what's the best opportunity for them, is what is their personal level of expertise. If you are not able to judge from a technical standpoint where Tesla is in relationship to their goals and what the size of the impact that those goals are going to have is, that makes it harder to invest in Tesla. I feel kind of similarly in relationship to NVIDIA. I don't know NVIDIA as a company nearly as well as I know Tesla. And so I feel somewhat at a loss, being able to judge how much of the current expectations that are built in for NVIDIA are hype and how much of them are reality. And so I think that, each investor needs to judge for themselves which story are they able to judge more accurately, and then really make their decisions off of that foundation. Because there's going to be tons and tons, like there's always a plethora of opportunities in the stock market, and you can't just try and win every single potential opportunities. You have to focus on what it is that you as an investor are good at, what your knowledge base is, what you're uh, able to do better than other people in the market at, and then pursue investment strategies that make sense for that specific investor based on their skills, aptitudes, maybe knowledge or information advantages. um, yeah, I think that all of those
Mhm.
things are definitely critically important.
Yeah, it could be a hype cycle. It could be. It also may not be. Right? So we have to like figure out which one
Yeah.
it is. And one of the signals that it could be hype cycle is, the shares of large U.S. and global tech companies have soared on the back of AI. AI leader NVIDIA is now approaching a market cap of 1.8 trillion. This is the third largest company in the US now after Microsoft and Apple. They just came skyrocketing right up there, third largest company now. And then if you look at the Mag 7, all the stocks are now roughly equal to the combined value of the UK, Japan, and Canada stock markets. So this is the table here showing the Mag 7 on the left, and then you've got Japan, Canada, and UK on the right. And this is just one. I also saw another one that's just profits is also pretty massive, taking over many, many countries already. Just the Mag 7 companies, C7 companies. So yeah, so is it a are we at the hype cycle or is this real? I mean,
Hmm.
I think it's real, but it's like it goes like this and then it'll probably fall a little bit, but I don't think it's gonna fall a lot, and then it's gonna skyrocket again. Um, it just feels like the advancements in generative AI has been significant. Although people are saying that, it's like, yeah, you see the advancements, but you also see that it hasn't quite yet achieved what they think is achieving. So, yeah,
Yeah,
last
I just
comments on
know,
this.
at least from my personal experience, that every time I go to use an artificial intelligence based
Yeah.
tool and I have
Mhm.
hopes of what it's going to be capable of, it has some amazing capabilities, but also comes with frustrating pain points that make it much harder to use in a way that actually generates net value instead of novel, like some small part of value that's new that I didn't have before, surrounded by a whole bunch of things that, you know, take up a lot of time or makes a process extremely cumbersome.
But it could also be just a sheer amount of compute. Put more compute, pour more videos in there or a logic, and then it could solve. Just like we're seeing with Tesla's, possible Chat GPT moment coming this year with version 12 coming out. It's looking very promising. That could be a big deal. You're seeing the progress with robots. The comments from almost all the robot companies is that the hardware, surprisingly, which is very doable. They said that that's already achievable, but it's actually the easier part compared to the AI. They're shocked at how easy it is to actually train robots to do certain very specific tasks. And then for it to be able to do autonomously. So these things
Mhm.
are shocking many people. It's moving fast.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hans. Follow him on his YouTube channel, Hans C. Nelson. Appreciate you, Hans. Talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.